assassin.
I'm a soldier.
You're neither. You're an errand boy. Sent by grocery clerks. To collect a bill.
So in 1899, Joseph Conrad's novella Heart of Darkness was published. And this was the story of a sailor travelling up the Congo River in search of an infamous ivory trader named Kurtz. 80 years later, deep in the Philippines, Francis Ford Coppola set about adapting the tale into one where a highly decorated and respectable American colonel named Kurtz goes off his rocker in the jungles of Cambodia, and how the US High Command assigns Captain Willard of Special Forces to search for him upriver. It's here in this Vietnamese Heart of Darkness that Willard must track him down and terminate his command.
Terminate with extreme prejudice.
Let's take a look at Apocalypse Now. So let's kick things off by saying that so much has already been said about Apocalypse Now since its 1979 release that I was kind of hesitant to add my own thoughts and do my own review. There must be so many other reviews out there, either here on YouTube or in print, and there's even a colossal and excellent documentary on the making of the film that's worth checking out. So there are several cuts of this movie that have appeared over the years, including a Redux version, which is this one, and a recently released final cut, which is this one just to my left here. The colossal 202-minute Redux is a bit of an unwieldy beast for me, and the final cut is a happy medium between the two, but they both feature a chunky scene featuring a family of holed-out French colonists on their remote rubber plantation that I personally think is still a bit superfluous to the rest of the film. And that's why for this video I'll be really talking about the original theatrical version of the film, because it's the one that I grew up with and the one that I rewatched endlessly on a widescreen VHS back in the day, and the one that I ultimately prefer. So guys, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews. Tell me in the comments which classic war film I should review next, and make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with more classic film. So deep in the Cambodian jungle, a rogue colonel has raised his own little private army consisting of mostly primitive indigenous tribesmen, and up there he's engaging in a unique brand of warfare that, even in the madness of the Vietnamese conflict, the US military top brass can't quite tolerate.
He's out there operating without any decent restraint, totally beyond the pale of any acceptable human conduct.
And that's where a fresh-faced Martin Sheen comes in. His Captain Willard must make the long voyage upriver to find and assassinate another soldier. Now, Sheen is excellent in this, and even though much of the film has him simply reacting in awe and disbelief at the madness he sees around him, we first find him between missions in a hotel room with nothing to do but descend into a drunken stupor. Sheen replaced Harvey Keitel, incidentally, a fortnight into the shoot, and ended up suffering a heart attack for his troubles. So once Willard's sobered up and given some orders, the film kicks into gear and essentially becomes a series of ever more outrageous set pieces. I mean, Apocalypse Now is genuinely like no other war film before or since. And most of this movie has since passed into pop culture history, running with a crazy colonel named Kilgore, played by a scene-stealing Robert Duvall, not only features large-scale Wagner soundtrack destruction in pursuit of clearing a beach for his men to surf, but also this legendary line.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
And as he journeys further upriver, Willard reviews Colonel Kurtz's dossier, searching for the reasons why this career military man suddenly took leave of his senses after a distinguished career. Or did he? And the closer he gets to his destination, the more Willard reflects on his own traumatic wartime experiences, which have him questioning his own sanity and maybe even his own similarities to Kurtz. If a soldier as honoured and respected as Kurtz can lose his mind in a place like this, what's to prevent him or anyone else doing the same? Or did Kurtz even lose his mind? Or did he just simply adapt to the situation and the environment around him?
Are my methods unsound?
I don't see any method at all.
And Apocalypse Now is really an investigation into the paradox of war. You know, Kurtz can't understand the difference between killing for his country and murder. How can there be any rules of engagement when facing an enemy that follows no rules? Now, I briefly mentioned Martin Sheen earlier, and Apocalypse Now came about 6 years after his career-defining turn in Badlands. He'd spent a good few years doing TV movies until Coppola came calling. The rest of the cast features a very young Lawrence Fishburne as Clean, a between Star Wars movies cameo from Harrison Ford, and Dennis Hopper as a wired-off-his-face photojournalist hanging around Kurtz's compound, and obviously Brando as Kurtz, which we'll get into in a minute. I'm also a massive fan of Albert Hall in this as Chief Phillips, whose boat Willard travels on. He's the no-nonsense skipper who tells it like it is.
Chief, my mission's got priority here. Hell, you wouldn't even be in this part of the river if it wasn't for me.
Until we reach your destination, Captain, you're just on for the ride.
So it's a bit of a cliche, but I feel like Apocalypse Now is similar to 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it's one of those films that is more of an experience than a story. The whole idea of the film is to begin with the Vietnam War, or our idea of it, and then begin to drift slowly away from it as we drift downriver. And by the time the crew pay a nighttime visit to the Do Lung Bridge, we're not really in a war film anymore. In fact, what I love about Apocalypse Now is that I'm not really sure what kind of film we're in by this point. When Willard and co coast through the mist into Kurtz's compound in the finale and the ultimately captured Willard is grabbed and turned upside down, the rest of the film follows suit. Here the encounter with Colonel Kurtz at his crazy temple base, a place where Brando's become a godlike figure amongst the natives, does slow the film's pace, but it nevertheless features some outstanding work from the actors and some shiver-inducing imagery. And even though it has its critics, the final third of the film plays out the only way it can really. It would never have been right for this all to kind of climax in some Rambo-style shootout. For me, it would have betrayed the direction the film and the Nyunga River was taking us in. Now, much has been made of Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now, and yeah, after negotiating $1 million a week salary, he famously turned up overweight and underprepared. By all accounts, Coppola had to rethink how he'd shoot the finale around the star's girth, but I personally think it all works out brilliantly. Having Kurtz emerging from the darkness, spouting philosophy and lecturing Willard about the futilities of warfare has a creepily surreal effect. You totally believe this man's gone nuts. I mean, Brando quite possibly had a little bit by this point, and you can almost sympathise with him and what he's been through. Kurtz's chilling story of a liberated camp and a group of inoculated children getting their little arms cut off perfectly illustrates both the ridiculousness and sheer waste of the war, and is one of my favourite scenes in the whole film.
The genius of that. The genius. The will to do that. Perfect, genuine, complete, crystalline.
So Apocalypse Now was obviously made before the age of digital special effects, and it's spectacular to look at still, and probably quite difficult for modern audiences, or modern filmmakers even, to appreciate the actual tangible epicness of it all. You know, they actually had 8 helicopters up in the air firing flares, and they really do blow up a huge area of jungle for that iconic napalm destruction opening shot. The whole thing for me is almost without fault really, and it's seriously one of the great war films. One of the great films, in fact. So the film's director, Francis Ford Coppola, didn't hit these heights again and has had a bit of a varied career bouncing between Hollywood productions and experimental films ever since, really. So I talk about runs and streaks on this channel quite a bit, and listen to this one. So between 1972 and 1979, Coppola directed The Godfather, The Conversation, The Godfather Part 2, and this, Apocalypse Now. Where else was there to go? Go check it out.